It's lunchtime.
Time for another fantastic episode of Ready to Die Fighting. Oh. Cut it out! And we are having a snow day.
Let's have snow. Let's party.
No party. No. Alright, get out of here. We've got work to do.
Okay.
So where to get started? We're working on bags. Now this one I had already set up. It's kind of new. Been playing with it for.
Can I get a granola bar? Shake your head. Shake your head. Shake your head.
Fine.
Yeah.
Get out of here. I was sparring Friday night, as I typically do on Friday nights, and I had a revelation. I realized I was going about my training completely wrong. I was sparring against a guy who I think is a little bit older than me. He's definitely got more experience than me fighting, and I believe a lot of his experience has been outside of the ring. So he's a pretty good fighter, and he's a decent sized guy, but pretty average, not particularly intimidating or ripped or anything. He's kind of an average guy. I'd say maybe 5'10", 5'11", maybe 180 pounds or so. Just guessing. I don't really know. Never measured him. And we're sparring, and it was very low, just kind of slow practicing, lightweight punches, not much more than what I'm doing here. And I realized as I sparring this guy, and he hit me several times just because his technique is better and I'm not all that good at evading. I usually can block or I can punch. I seem to struggle going back and forth between the two. And so he was having no problem just pop, 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 busting my face up. And it occurred to me as I was doing this. Now, I've also held pads for this guy, and I've held like the focus mitts and things like that. And like I said, average guy, but his punches are pretty devastating just on pads. If I'm holding a pad up to my chest and he punches it, he sends me flying back 2 or 3 steps. And I'm no welterweight. And I realized if he were actually punching me, he would have hit me 30 times in the head, and only one of them, it only took one to knock me clean out, and fight's over. I'm dead. And that is a problem. I feel like I am just statistically more likely to be attacked by a man than a woman. And your average guy is just bigger and stronger than me, and probably faster, and quite possibly, especially if he's someone who would attack a random person, he's probably got a criminal record, or at least has a background of that if he hasn't gotten caught, and maybe a good fighter, better than me, more experienced than me. I haven't been in a whole lot of backyard brawls or anything. I got bullied a bit when I was a kid, but not so past high school. I haven't been in a fight past high school. So it occurred to me, I'm spending all this time focusing on punching and making sure my technique is right as far as my punches go, and punching with speed and accuracy has been a big goal, but realistically my focus should be not getting punched. That should be my primary goal, because if your average man punches me in the face, if he lands a solid hit, done, fight's over, right? Makes sense to me. So it almost, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter how well I can punch, because I think it does, but it's more important that I don't get punched and wear the guy out. Because another thing that I've noticed is I can punch the bag. I do 2-minute rounds on the heavy bag, and that's not too much of a problem, honestly, just hitting that bag over and over again, not at 100%, but maybe at 75%. I can do that. I can do that for multiple rounds. Hitting this guy, not even at 30%, is far more tiring, because you're hitting air, and what happens, you hit the bag. I don't know if the bag is in focus here, but if I hit the heavy bag, my fists stop and it kind of bounces back, and it's easy. I don't have to exert a whole lot of effort bringing my arm back, bringing my fist back, I mean. This guy, even if I connect, I have to stop myself from hyperextending because it just moves, or I'll just roll off even. Or even if I miss, it's the same thing. But then there's not a whole lot of bounce back. I have to use my own strength to pull my arm back and recoil. And missing a punch is far more exhausting than actually connecting on that punch. And boxing and sparring is pretty fatiguing if you're not, especially if you're not training for it. You know, most fights only last a few seconds because people wear out. So my theory is if I were to be attacked by some guy and I need to defend myself, my focus really should be on evasion until he fatigues to the point where I can confidently hit him a few times myself at that point. So reserve my energy, protect my body, and then wait 5 seconds till he's blown through his steam or whatever. Blown through his steam. Whatever phrase, I'm not sure. Blow through his energy? I don't know. And then attack. I think that makes sense when I think about it. So I need to get better at evasion. Now this was partially my goal with this guy, was to work on evasive techniques. But what I'm finding is when I hit it, it does come close, it doesn't actually hit me. So even though I kind of get that like, oh, I better move, I actually don't have to move. I could just stay in the same spot and keep hitting it, and it's making me flinch a little bit because it does get close, but it never actually gets to me. So I'm not, I know that I don't have to move away from this thing. And so I did a little Google search trying to figure out how can I train evasive techniques by myself. Because sometimes I have a sparring partner, sometimes I don't. More often than that, I don't. I'm in my basement by myself. So how can I practice that alone? And I learned about slip bags or maze bags, maze balls, however you want to call them. And I'm like, ha, that's the training I need to be doing. So more important than these two bags, I think, for my new focus is going to be my slip bag. And they don't cost too much, but I saw that I could just make one myself instead of ordering. Ringside does make one, and I thought about buying it. But then I was reading about you could just make one out of a yoga ball and some sand, and that also makes it a good punching tool to help build up fist power and punching a moving target. I'm like, you know what, that's the way I want to go. So that's what we did. Yoga bag, or yoga ball, exercise ball, a couple of zip ties, and I think 18 pounds of sand. I'm going to hang this up here, and then a piece of tactical cordage. See how that holds up. And I think I'm just going to hang it from the same hook as this guy. If you saw my video of me installing this and working on this guy, I did get a new bungee cord for it. I couldn't find one the appropriate length, and so I just cut the hooks off and tied a couple of knots, use electrical tape to keep it from unraveling and coming loose, just kind of double secure it, and that, I think, is going to be good. So I'm just going to disconnect this. And so as far as height is concerned, I want this to be roughly, I think I want it to come like about to maybe nose or chin height. Yeah, I guess nose height. So that'll swing back and hit me in the face. I don't really want it to hit me in the face. Now that I'm saying that, that sounds like a terrible idea. I feel like I can make it a bit shorter still, but problem is my ceiling is too low. I don't feel like I can get enough swing here. Maybe that's just scared. I don't want to get hit in the back of the head with a 18 pounds of sand. But that's I could probably put more sand in here, realistically. Maybe I should take these glasses off. New to this. But I think this will do quite well to get me moving more. At the very least, get my head moving a little bit more. And it's also higher. I have a tendency to punch low on the heavy bag. I think that's because just that's where the logo is, and so I always aim for the logo. And that's chest height. Realistically, I would probably be fighting someone taller than me. And at the very least, even if I'm fighting someone the same height as me, I'd want to aim for their head. So this will force me to punch higher. I would do this bare knuckle, so it would help strengthen my wrist and fist. I guess I could use gloves if I wanted to, but I was envisioning a bare knuckle thing with this. And it should get me moving my head a little bit more, practicing those slips and bobs and weaves, which I'm clearly terrible at. So I don't have much fear of this breaking on me, so that's good. I think this is a winner, at least for now. I'll let you know how it progresses. All right, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to do some practicing with this, figuring out how I can work out with it exactly, how I can incorporate it into my workout. Maybe a different place to hang it so I can have all 3 bags up at the same time. When I do rounds, when I'm doing my regular workouts, I typically will do a 2-minute round on the heavy bag, 2 minutes on the double end bag, and then I switch back and forth. Somewhere in there, I might throw in a 2-minute footwork drill as well. And I do 16 rounds of that. So I'd like to incorporate this into that, but I suppose I could just switch bags out during my break, but we'll figure it out. I have to find another place to hang this one. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, leave some comments, some tips and suggestions for me if you have any. And thanks for watching. Oh, got me. Oh. They'll get me used to getting hit in the head too. Oh.